presentation, but it's more like I wanted to show you pictures what we did 14 years ago, and I thought that seeing those peaks from that time will give you a better idea of what happened and how we did it and why we did it. I always like to start with this one because, and I like to ask people what they think that they are seeing there. And many people think that that's a hose, and that she's holding a hose, but it's actually it's a slingshot. And my friend, the one who took the picture, said that you can see that in the picture, but behind her there are a lot of people. And every time that she will throw the stones to the police, he said that she wasn't very good, so all the people in the back were, So I come from Bolivia. Cochabamba is my city, and it's in the middle of the country, and that's an estimated of the population there. So you have an idea of how many people were on the streets and what happened, how they mobilized. So in 1999, well, in the 1986, I'm sorry, I'm going to go a little bit far, but our government decided to privatize all the public companies. So pretty much what's happening here. They privatized the oil industry, the railroads, telecommunications, and it was a big defeat for people because people couldn't do anything. Actually, in 1986, there's a very famous march of miners. Miners were coming from all over the country, and they were heading up to La Paz, walking. And they were trying to stop these policies that were coming, and they were pushed by the World Bank and the IMF, the same guys that we hear the names all the time. And the army stopped this march. And they said, if you go to La Paz, you're going to be killed, so you have to go back. So they put them in trains, and they took them back to their places of origin. And this march is seen in Bolivia as when we start to be defeated. Everything since then went downhill, and we couldn't win any battle. We couldn't organize. The miners' movement, that was a very good and very well-organized movement, suddenly lost people, and because mines were privatized and miners were laid off. So a new wave of this privatization came in 1999, and because there were still some things that they couldn't sell, so they decided to privatize the water system in Cochabamba, Bolivia. But it was not just the privatization of our water system. It came with a legislation. And this legislation, it was putting the framework, the legal framework for privatizing every single water source in our country. So some things that this legislation said were, for example, that any kind of collection of water wouldn't be allowed. And what Martin was mentioning earlier, for example, people started to wonder, is collecting water from the rain going to be legal? Other thing that this legislation said is that if you wouldn't pay your water bill 3 consecutive months, your house can be taken by the water company, and with no process or any kind of procedure. The other thing that this legislation said that suddenly all the water sources belonged to the state, to the government, and the government will give concession of these water sources. So, irrigation, water systems, and wells that people had, or communities that had their own well and they were providing water to the population, suddenly they will lose their rights to manage that. And it will belong to the state, and the state will give them in concession if it was, if they feel with time. And then there's the mayor and other people from the government that are celebrating our water system trespass to a consortium that in that time we didn't know exactly what it was. So when this was happening, there was a small amount of people outside of these offices protesting against this signing of this contract. And when Banzer, our president at that time, heard that, because he was a former dictator, hear these people protesting with fireworks and stuff like that, he just said, "Oh, I'm used to listen this type of music," like completely dismissing what people were trying to do. So farmers were the first ones that came to the city and said, this legislation is really going to affect us, so what we're going to do about that. So people, I feel pretty much the same kind of environment here, didn't know exactly what to do and how to do things. We called for a mobilization at the end of the year, 1999, and some people went into the streets, nothing big, nothing to worry about. But in February, we decided to call for a big mobilization. And we said, we're going to have a rally. People from the countryside, the farmers, are going to come to the city, and we, people from the city, are going to receive them, and we're going to have a party, because it's going to be a meeting from the countryside and the people from the city. So we're going to have a party. So we organized this mobilization in February, and we all had to get together in the middle of the city, that is, what we call plaza. And the government said, we're not going to allow that to happen, because they were afraid that the indigenous, that the Indians were going to take, we're going to destroy our city. So they brought police from other parts of the country. And for several days before we had this mobilization, these police were just running around the city in their motorcycles, trying to scare people. And the day that arrived of the mobilization, and they didn't let us even go 50 meters, and they started to throw tear gases and rubber bullets to the people. And what it had to be a one-day mobilization suddenly became a two-day mobilization, because we couldn't get into the plaza, and people were very angry about it because they said, this is our place, it's our public space, so we have the right to get in. So by the next day, people, because couldn't get into the plaza, went again to the plaza and tried to get in. And it became a really battle on the streets against the police. And by the end of the day, the government decided to sign an agreement with us, saying, okay, we're gonna freeze the water deals, because at that time when this consortium took over it, the water rates went into almost 200%. People couldn't afford to pay that. And so they said, we're gonna freeze the water rates, and we're gonna review the legislation and see what can we change, and we're gonna review the contract with this consortium to see what's wrong there. And we considered that a victory. And we thought, we had a good chance to arrive to some sort of agreement with the government that's going to allow us, to be fine. This is our one of the dates of mobilizations, and you can see this is our slogan, and it says, "The water is ours, STEM." So we arrived to March. We started this in February. We arrived to March, and we decided, seeing like the government was not honoring their agreements, we decided to launch a public referendum. So we organized ourselves, and we asked the people, do we want this company to stay here? Do we want the water to be, public? And do we want changes in the legislation? 99% of the population said yes to these things. But the government completely, again, said, this is not legal, it's not a legal tool, so you don't have the right to do this, and completely, humiliated us, saying, you're just few people trying to make a problem of this, nothing is going to happen. And in April, we arrived to April, and we were completely tired because the government didn't do anything, and the water charges were still happening, and people started to do civilians. People didn't pay the water bills. More than that, they would bring the water bills to the main plaza, and we would burn the bills there, saying we're not going to pay for that. So there were all these sort of things happening at the same time. It wasn't just one strategy, but there were many things happening, and people were self-organizing. Nobody was going to the neighborhoods and telling them what to do. People in the neighborhoods just start to talk among themselves, and they said, we're going to do this, or we're going to do this other thing. So there wasn't any leadership, but it was more like, what can we do together, and how can we, as a community, work together? So in April, things started to get very, hard for everybody because, water bills were still coming to our houses. Everybody was affected: rich people, middle class, poor people, and we called for a final mobilization, and we call this the final battle, saying, or we win here, or we're going to lose, and it's going to be another defeat, and there's nothing that we can do. Transport workers help us. You can see they completely shut down the city. The movement started to spread out to other cities in Bolivia because everybody was going to be affected by the legislation. And this is one day of mobilization in Cochabamba. You can see that nobody else could be inside of the plaza. There were people trying to get in, but it was impossible, and they were inside of the plaza trying to get in. So it was a real battlefield. And again, nobody told people, oh, do a Molotov and go and throw it to the government, or go and throw stones to the police. But people organized themselves in order to do this. We realized that this consortium that came to our country, it was a very, very rich consortium, and it was made by many big corporations. One of them was Cartel, that is a U.S. company. Edison from Italy was also involved. It was a bar from Spain that was also involved in this. And there were some local businessmen also in Bolivia that were going to get a profit from the privatization of the water. Somebody that did that banner said, they don't speak Spanish, so we're going to tell them in their own language that they should go home. That some people giving food to the people who were mobilizing on the streets. Again, nobody told the people, take food. They just did it, and they brought water for the people that were sleeping on the streets, and trying to keep the police away. You can see the floor there that's full of stones. Those are the only tools that people have to respond to the police. So anyway, in April, the government ignored completely our demands, and at some point, the people got so angry that they were not just demanding for this company to leave our country and changes in the legislation. At some point, people were saying, well, the government should be leaving. The government should resign. And this was something that really scared the government, and said, oh, this is becoming not just a water issue, but suddenly a political issue. And we also got very scared because those were the demands from the people. And at some point, one Friday, after a week of mobilizations, one Friday we got the news from the bishop of the city saying the government said they don't want to have blood in their hands, so they're going to resign the contract. They're going to make changes in the legislation, and everything is going to be back to normal. and people started to celebrate, thinking, oh, we won, this is a victory, the company's going to leave, they're going to change the legislation, and it's all fine. But it was, again, another lie from the government, because at midnight, the same day, when people were still celebrating, dancing on the streets, there was a big mass on the cathedral in the city to celebrate, that we are, again, in peace. That same night, the government declared martial law, and not only put the police on the streets, but put the army on the streets.
Sorry, Marcela.
So it was getting more, it was getting more violent, and there was a lot of tension. So that midnight, they came to our houses looking for the main spokespersons of the movement. They kidnapped many of them, and they put them on planes, and they sent them to remote areas in Bolivia. And we thought, this is over, we lost. The government has control of the city, the armies on the cities, like in the times of the dictators. So there's nothing that we can do. And I remember, having this awful feeling of, first to be cheated, because they told us it was over and that we won, and then feeling no, and they're putting army on the streets, it's awful. We didn't sleep that night, and next morning what we saw is thousands of people on the streets again. Nobody called them, but they were there saying, we're not going to listen to the government, doesn't matter martial law, we're going to do this, we're going to, defend our water. Because we thought that, they can privatize, airlines, they can privatize anything, but, privatizing water is the essence of life. So, if one is poor, just get second-hand clothes, or goes to a public school, or, or you eat less, or but we cannot do the same with water. It's something that we all need. It was for people there. It was like a question of death or life. So that Saturday, the streets were again full of people. We were very scared that was going to become a civil war. And after a long day of battles, again, like what you're seeing here, the government, one kid, this is a picture, a television too, of a sharpshooter that's mixed with the army. And that day, an 18-year-old kid was killed on the streets. And that's when it was really over. This kid died, and all the city went quiet. The army called again to the soldiers, to their military bases. The police went inside also to their headquarters. And the city was completely silent. And finally, the government said, "You're right. We're gonna call off this contract." And in 24 hours, they changed completely the legislation, and they put it on, all of the demands of the people and the farmers there. Something that takes months in our Congress, to arrive at an agreement with legislation, suddenly in 24 hours was completely changed. And, the company had to leave. And we thought we won, we won again, but there was a sour taste in our mouth because an 18-year-old kid was killed, but also many people were wounded, people that lost their eyes, that they won't be able to use their arms again the way that they were before, and many of them were very, very, very young. So we did it, but again, it cost us a lot of suffering and a lot of pain. And something that I like to tell the people is that we have this slogan when we are in a mobilization that says that people united will never be defeated. And sometimes we say it like, out of conviction, maybe. But I can tell you that that's very much possible. We live it in Bolivia, and we did it in Bolivia. And people from different backgrounds, politicians, economists, congressmen, farmers, people from the poor neighborhoods of the city, rich people, we all got together and we all sat down at the same table and we all decided what we were going to do. And it was possible to do. I was in court a couple of days ago and there was a disagreement about something that I couldn't quite understand because my English is not very good and you guys have a very thick accent for my but there were some people there that were saying, we have to forget this. It's okay, we have so many differences between us, but the enemy is one. It's what the Zapatista says. There are many yes, but there is one no. So I feel like because we all drink water, this is going to be something that is going to unite people around the common cause. So I wish you very much luck in what you're gonna do. I told also the people in court that, as I was seeing the language that they are using and full cost recovery and stuff like that, and the water charges that are planning to do here in Ireland. It reminded me so much to the language that we used to read in these contracts that we did in Bolivia. But it reminded me also, the environment that I felt there, the energy, the anger. It reminded me also what we were living there at that time and when we were trying to organize against this. So I feel like there is a lot of stuff to do here. And I think this victory, after that could be a victory, after some defeatness, everybody talks about the house tax thing, and that seems like a trauma. I think we have to forget that. We have to move on, and we have to go into the next thing. Thank you very much. I will just finish there, and if there are questions or things like that, maybe we can talk later. I think I'm better at questions and answers than just talking on my own here. Thank you very much.